Manchester City closed the gap on Arsenal to 2 points last night with a 3-0 victory over Crystal Palace. But was there some disrespect to Arsenal with Pep Guardiola's starting lineup? Did Phil Foden possibly play his way into Tuchel's World Cup plans? Why was Pep so furious at his team even when they was 3-0 up? And which Manchester City player might have played their way out of the club with a summer transfer after last night's performance? All this and more coming up here on the Final Whistle Football Show. So let's get stuck in. All right. So last night, Manchester City, comfortable victory over Crystal Palace. Let's start off by talking and saying that. Let's be upfront and honest. I think any Manchester City fan will say that. Any Crystal Palace fan will say that. Did we expect anything different? I don't know. I don't think so. I didn't. I think most people would have expected last night that Manchester City at home against Crystal Palace, who don't really have much to play for, you would have expected a comfortable victory. And it was in the end. It was a bit of a walk in the park for Manchester City. Early scare, but fantastic save, which was ruled offside anyway. But other than that, nothing other than a Manchester City victory was on the cards all evening. But let's talk first of all about, did Pep disrespect Arsenal with his starting lineup? Because I think a lot of people expected last night 3 points for Manchester City. I think what people didn't expect last night was that Pep would have started Haaland and Doku, of all players, on the bench. So he made multiple changes, probably 5-6 changes to his normal starting lineup last night. Still had a strong squad, a strong first 11, of course, because they have a very strong squad. But in such an important game, but also what made me think, it wasn't so much Haaland, actually. I mean, Haaland's, you can understand why you might rest your star striker. He's not been on fire this season. Recently, he's been good. He's not been on fire. But Doku, I watched the game at the weekend against Brentford, and everything, and I mean everything from Manchester City went via Doku down that left-hand side. If Doku wasn't playing at the weekend, I don't think City would have coasted to that victory they did. I don't even know where they would have scored, to be honest. So I was quite surprised to see Doku benched. But at the same time, Pep, of course, he probably knew that game was winnable without his star players. Obviously, he did. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done that. But at the same time, there's a small game this weekend called the FA Cup Final against Chelsea, what he probably had an eye on. So if you've got a chance to rest your players, if you're in, you can always throw them on second half or something if you're in trouble. But yeah, he rested multiple players last night, and he got away with it. It still ended up being a comfortable victory, and that was that really. So yeah, Manchester City. If I reflect on the performance overall for Manchester City last night, what I would say is, despite making so many changes, what I saw in the first half in particular, especially the first half an hour, is I saw a little bit more va-va-voom from City, At the weekend against Brentford, felt like a bit of a hangover game. I felt like Manchester City were very, not sloppy as such, but quite slow-paced. There didn't seem to be much energy and much enthusiasm in the game. It was just a lot of passing sideways and backwards and not much, not much energy. That's what I was missing at the weekend, which was quite surprising given how important that game was, and especially given how up for it you would have expected them to be, given how well Brentford had been playing. Luckily for them, Brentford didn't really turn up at the weekend, and luckily for them again, maybe last night, Crystal Palace didn't really show up. Again, Crystal Palace were missing a few players due to injury, which impacted their performance, no doubt. But overall, Manchester City, really good first half an hour, right? So good energy, got the first goal in there as well. They've been known this season for scoring more goals in the second half than the first. But last night, it was the opposite. They went out, they scored the first, they got the second. And they walked away with the victory in the end, and a deserved victory. So that was a good thing. Now, first goal. Wow, Phil Foden. Hats off to you, my man. Brilliant first goal created by Foden. Nice little flick there, put away by Savinho. And great goal. But I think one definitely stand out last night for me was Phil Foden. It was great to see him in the starting 11. But it was also great to see him again, just playing in those pockets like he does. He's such a good mover, right? He just moves around and floats around and finds the spaces. He always wants the ball. And that's exactly what he did last night. And Palace just couldn't keep a hold of him, right? They couldn't control him. They couldn't mark him because he was just floating around. So Crystal Palace struggled with Phil Foden last night, and Phil Foden was brilliant in the first half for sure. He picked up the Man of the Match award at the end of the game, deservedly so. I think Pep took him off, if I remember rightly. I think he did 60, 70 minutes, probably maybe a bit more, but played a really good game. Much more effective in the first half, but that's because Palace also changed and pressed a lot more in the second half, which helped them sort of keep the scoreline reasonable, let's say. So did Phil Foden possibly play his way into Tuchel's plans last night? I don't think just one performance is going to get him automatically into the World Cup squad. We already know due to his game time this season that it's unlikely he's going to go to the World Cup, but who knows? If he's given some more minutes in these last couple of games, maybe the FA Cup final as well, if he plays like he did last night in those games, I think he's certainly not doing his chances any harm of getting into Tuchel's squad. So yeah, that's Phil Foden. That's the starting lineup. Let's just talk about that. City went on to score the second goal. After that second goal, it was a little bit... you could sense after the second goal, they was pushing a little bit for 5 minutes or so for the third. But then it kind of went a little bit quiet. So you had this period at 2-0 where they felt comfortable, got to half time, but then it kind of just had a period of obviously at half time, there was changes there, what Palace had made, and they came out in this second half doing a lot better with their pressing. So and just to talk about Palace a little bit last night, in the first half, Palace offered absolutely zero. Of course, the defense was trying its best to compose itself and keep City at bay. That was very difficult because of how City were playing. They played really well in the first half. The midfield were doing their best, but really just getting overrun by Manchester City there. They had a strong midfield out last night. The attackers, they didn't really see them at all, really. They didn't get into that final third barely at all in that first half or the second half. They tested Donnarumma a couple of times in the entire game, but yeah, never really looked super dangerous at all. So there was that period of time there where 10 to 20 minutes where Manchester City sort of took their foot off the pedal. They was getting pressed a lot more by Crystal Palace, and Palace worked their way into the game, and you kind of got this feeling of like, ooh, are Palace going to sneak a goal here and change this game and turn this game around? And I felt at Brentford at the weekend, and also in that 20 minutes last night, I felt a little bit like, there's a bit of nervousness kicking in here, both from Pep, but also the players, because I think they've been really sort of hit by what happened to them in the Everton game, a week and a half, a couple of weeks ago, where they was, of course, coasting at 1-0 and then, lost the lead and had to come back and rescue a point. And I felt that against Brentford at the weekend as well. There was two, I think, when there was 2 up at Brentford at the weekend, felt the same thing. It's like go off. You did feel the urgency at the weekend of when they went 1-0 up, they went for the throat. They went to try and kill off the game. And that was obviously a result of, they probably got slaughtered in the changing room of Pep after losing that advantage over Everton. And then again last night, just that 10, 20-minute period, you felt like, ooh, Crystal Palace could get back in this. But Pep made some changes. He started to switch some players straight away after sort of 15 minutes or so of the second half. And that again just changed the game a little bit. And they ended up coasting to the victory. So 3-0 up. Around about, I think it was when it was around about 12 minutes to go, and Pep was absolutely screaming at his players, screaming at them, jumping up and down, literally jumping up and down on the sidelines. Now you would think, okay, 3-0 up, what's he so mad about? They played a good game. Yeah, he might have been a bit frustrated it took him so long at 2-0 to get that third goal, but now they got the third goal, they're getting the 3 points, they've got a clean sheet so far, there's been no threat. Why is he so mad, right? And it was, I can't remember who it was. One of the City players had the ball, and he was looking at his options for who to pass it to. I think it was one of the centre backs, possibly. And he just played the ball down the left-hand side, straight out of play. It was a poor pass. It didn't reach anybody. I don't know whether Pep was more angry at the bad pass or more angry at the fact that like nobody was coming to ask for the ball. But one thing, and this is one thing to take into account last night, what happened is, yes, they're still 2 points behind Arsenal. But a result of what happened last night is that Manchester City are now +1 over Arsenal on the goal difference. So before the game started last night, Arsenal had a 2-goal advantage over City when it comes to goal difference. And when you look at how close the league is right now and what's going on, then that might matter depending on the results of the next 2 games. So, and I think Pep knew that last night. He knew that, and he knew that even at 3-0, they're +1 over Arsenal now. That's great. That's advantage Manchester City. But they had an opportunity last night to go and score 4, to go score 5 if they would have pressed and carried on pressing. And I think that is the reason why Pep was so vocally and so sort of visually angry on the sidelines, even though his team were 3-0 up. So yeah, and it's just Pep, right? That's his standards are super high, but I think he also knows right now they need every advantage they can get, because at the end of the day, Arsenal are still in pole position. It's still in their control, and Manchester City can just do whatever possible to try and sort of put themselves in a position to take advantage if Arsenal slip. Really, yeah. Now, the only one last thing I would say last night is in the last 10 minutes as well, what also happened, which I could see really was annoying Pep, was the third goal was scored by Savinho. Savinho stayed on the pitch throughout the 90 minutes plus injury time. He started the game today. Now, before today's game, Savinho, he's not had much game time this season. I think he's played maybe 16 games from the bench or something, started very few games. He scored 1 goal, done 1 assist. Then he scored last night. You could see when he scored, it was like a weight off his chest. He scored to make it 3-0. It was a good goal. But overall last night, he didn't play well. When you compare him to Semenyo and Doku, especially at the weekend against Brentford, but all season, those 2 players on the wing, they know how to go past players, right? They know how to get past their man, get the ball in the box. And Savinho, he's playing on the right-hand side last night, and that's what he's supposed to do. But in all honesty, he's never been great at that. I think in his first season when he first came, he's shown sort of good signs that he was going to be a good player. But I think he's disappointed since then. And last night, he just didn't get past his man. I didn't see him beat his man even once last night on that side of the pitch. And that was disappointing. But I think what also annoyed Pep the most was he went down with cramp, I think, with about 10 minutes to go in the game. And he was down pretty bad with cramp. And I could see Pep, the camera was in on Pep, and Pep was looking pretty unimpressed by the fact that a player who's getting paid a lot of money, who should be fit, is down with cramp in, let's face it, a game which wasn't exactly a high-intensity big game, what was difficult. And he's down with cramp with 10 minutes to go of the 90. Not really good, right? You could see he wasn't impressed. And then, again, he was down with cramp really badly in his other leg. I think that was with just a couple of minutes more to go, so like within 10 minutes of the previous one. So I think it was a good test last night for some players to come into that team, to start the game from the beginning, what they haven't had a chance to do much of this season, but also for Pep to look at his squad and look at those players and be like, do we keep these players? Because people like Savinho, He wasn't super expensive, but he cost a lot of money. I'm sure he's on a big salary. And when they've brought in, obviously, new players this season in those positions, you've got to question whether he's going to still be there after the summer, especially after the performance tonight. So that was pretty much it. So let's just cover quickly the league standings right now. So Manchester City move within 2 points of Arsenal. And just talking about that goal difference now. So they're +1 over Arsenal. Everybody in the leagues now has played 36 games. So there's just 2 more games to play. Arsenal, what happens here? That goal difference could take a big, big advantage for Manchester City if Arsenal draw one of the next 2 games. Okay, so if Arsenal only take a point from their next game and Manchester City win, that means that Manchester City will go above Arsenal on goal difference. And that is why that goal difference could be so critical by the end of the season. So this basically puts Arsenal in a situation where you're like, if Manchester City win their next 2 games, you cannot afford to drop any points. Arsenal must win both games. Otherwise, they're going to risk that Manchester City will win the league on goal difference. And my goodness, after finishing second so many seasons on points, even despite having record amount of points, imagine if Arsenal ended up losing it this season on goal difference. That would be very, very painful. All right, but that's it for today. I just wanted to give you that quick recap on the game last night, Manchester City, Crystal Palace. Good game, good performance, lots of talking points there. And I guess we're all primed now for a very, very exciting final couple of games. But also looking forward to the FA Cup final at the weekend to see if Chelsea can change their fortunes after a difficult season. So, thanks for tuning in, folks. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll be obviously posting some more videos before the weekend and over the weekend with the games coming up. Take care.